chronologically, we're at the end of the line for the CWB real battles. This is Embrace an Angry Wind, or Inhale a Foul Stench, or whatever you want to call it. This is an interesting one from my standpoint. Back when I bought Thunder at the Crossroads, my buddy Nick was with me, and he was kind of pissed that I got it and he didn't. But he ended up picking this one up, and then he wasn't really thrilled with this one either, but I played it with him partway at least, and I really liked it. There were aspects of it that I thought were so cool, and we'll touch on those. This is one of the weirder ones out there. We can see the last couple have been very odd. Barren Victory, Bloody Road South, and then this one. And none of these got reprints or re-releases as a second edition. Now, they all came out in the second edition rules set, I believe. There's very little that came out in the first edition, and I don't have... I have one, I think. Maybe Bloody Road South was the one. Anyway. Instead, other small battles were done. And that's cool because, you know, you can find these guys, most of them at reasonably priced, about what you pay for new. This one's particularly odd. It's a two-mapper, but the two maps aren't adjacent. And in fact, I've got them set up wrong. This map should be rotated, because, let's see, north is this way. So basically this edge here should be near that edge, but they don't quite connect. There's, I don't remember what it was, like 3 miles distance between the two maps. So there's room for a more mappage, and that gets covered through these little tunnels that are going to connect the two maps. And there's basically 3 ways they're connected. And it's really not too complicated. Another thing that's particularly interesting about this battle is that it's a crazy-ass battle. Hood is on, you know, a completely vainglorious mission to go take Nashville. And Thomas is sitting in Nashville, and there's no way Hood, with this force, is going to be able to take out Nashville. He's withdrawing from Atlanta. He's failed to really do much in terms of dislodging Sherman. So he's going to try to cut the supply lines, which probably wouldn't do much either, and provide a rear area threat. Okay, fine. But on the way, he runs into this Union force under Schofield. I think it's an army. He's got an army command. And if you look at the forces involved, neither is very large. The Union Army is pretty small, just two small corps. The Confederates have a larger army, but they have the unfortunate condition of being commanded by Hood. Hood at this point has taken a couple of significant wounds, including recently his leg amputation, is a total laudanum addict, and, well, Hood's always been kind of a quirky character in terms of probably being more about political infighting than really good generalship, and in a lot of ways some of his reputation was made more by his letters written after the battles than by perhaps his actual performance in them. And in this battle, he performs extraordinarily poorly. For one thing, in his maneuvering to get here, he's in a hurry to get out of away from his commander, nominal commander Beauregard, because he's afraid that this whole plan will get nixed by him. But then he goes, camps out in Arkansas, and doesn't do anything for quite a while. Anyway, eventually he gets moving. We're fairly late in the year here. What are we, November 29th? The biggest thing about this game is that linkage between the maps. So what we have here is Franklin's Hex B connects to Spring Hill B. The railway connects, I believe, they say to the Northern Railway. To Franklin South Railway exit hex, that'll be down here. To Spring Hill North Railway exit hex, let's find north is going to be here. Now that's a longer route, even though they're kind of close together, so you'd probably not take that. And then the longest of the routes is from Franklin A to Spring Hill C, which is going to be all the way over here. And you notice the railway seems to cut across this road or whatever, and there's nothing to account for that. You just, if you exit by this, you follow the railway path. You can't take any kind of exchange there. Okay. Both maps have fortifications on the board. These guys, if the Union holds them until 2:30, and the game starts down here at 10 a.m., and there aren't a lot of Confederate forces coming in. There's really just this to contest it. If they're able to hold them till 2:30, they end up getting, and I should probably actually move these guys forward. I'm not quite sure how far forward I want to move them. They can be within 10 hexes of this. I was counting on the fortifications there. If they can hold them for that long, they end up getting regular breastworks there. On the other hand, over here in Franklin, there's full entrenchments, and it looks the same. Just deal with it. There's also a fort here, which is an all-around entrenchments hex, all-around facing for the units that are in it, which is kind of cool. We talk about the game not having casualty tracks, which always kind of saddens me. You don't really need them. Some of the games I've played, they don't use them at all for any victory point purpose, but you end up kind of, I end up moving the pieces along them. They make me happy. Okay, special rules here. Okay, before Schofield enters the map, Stanley is going to be the acting commanding army commander. And he's over here with 4th Corps. We only have 2 corps, remember? So that's not too big a deal. He must issue orders to himself and accept them in the normal way. Wow. So he's going to be particularly hindered by that. The Union Cav and Casements are the only plus weapons units in the game. Well, this Spring Hill unit, it's a Cav unit, okay. So yeah, there's one plus weapon that's not Cav. And there's some discussion of the historical why he's chosen that, even though some people have made a claim that the Union had a lot of repeaters here. The Spring Hill Garrison, these 2 units are basically fully independent. They don't even have to stay near Spring Hill. Coxton's 1-1 Cav is assigned to Johnson's division. We'll see that when it comes in. The Union's going to have these Army supply train units, and they come in every couple hours or every hour or so, depending. These are going to be the trains, the full Army supply train, and this is a little, this is a heavier train than you usually see in a battle. Usually you see just the ammo supply. This is the stuff that's usually kept off board in most games. They can never cross a bridge in the same hour as another unit, as another one of them. So if you end up kind of collecting them up near a bridge, well, you're going to have to slowly trickle them across. They also can never occupy spaces that are adjacent to each other. They're captured if the Confederates walk into them, and that's got some victory point consequences. There's 2 bridges across the Harpeth River, and they both have little, hey, I'm not really bridge markers. One's damaged, one's destroyed. The railway bridge is damaged, and it's too small to move the army wagons through. But you are able to move regular units across it. The other bridge is destroyed and has to be repaired. To repair the bridge, you have to have been... Okay, so let me see. The damaged bridge costs 2 extra movement points to cross, and it can't be fixed. To repair the other bridge, the Union has to be the last to occupy hexes on either side of the bridge with infantry. And from then on, unless the Confederates move into that area, he can try to repair them. And he has to roll 2 dice of 10 or more, and then the bridge will be repaired, and then the wagons and other things can move across them. Only the destroyed bridge can be repaired. Confederates can't redestroy the destroyed bridge if it is repaired. They didn't realize how important it was to the situation. Okay, some variants are here. Additional cav. Basically, who is it? Wilson sends his cav off here to Franklin. And that causes some problems. Oh, he's got some cav that's not on the board to begin with. Let's see. Oh, that's in a specific. That's in the Franklin scenario. I'll have that available for free in the full campaign scenario. But yeah, Wilson sends his troops over to Franklin when the Confederate attack is over at Spring Hill. And he basically sends orders to his superior, Schofield, hey, come back to Franklin. And Schofield's like, what? And there's an option that allows you to keep Wilson on the Spring Hill map early on. Okay, what about Hood? Hood's got tons of rolls. First of all, Hood is either mobile or immobile. And he's got this counter. If he's mobile, he's got no points for command. If he's immobile, he's got 2 points for command. He's gotten off his horse. He had to be strapped onto his horse, and and he'll also in mobile move have only half the command points to issue commands with. We also have the Hood addiction table. Every turn you get to roll on this and see what happens to Hood. And they could go all the way to committing suicide, which would be good for you. In other cases, he might not be able to do anything. He also might go manic, which can do a couple of problems. One of which, well, one is good, he gets more command points. One is bad, he issues commands according to the Union's decision. And then there's the disciplining attack. Now, Hood historically got so disgusted by his forces' inability to prosecute at Spring Hill and move quickly. Of course, during this time, I think it was Cheatham who showed up to complain about orders that didn't make sense. And he wasn't the only one who had orders that didn't make sense. And some of the initial orders don't make sense. And discovered Hood passed out under the effects of his laudanum. And then just kind of wandered away. And basically nobody did anything about it. Well, once Hood awakened, he was so upset about how poorly his troops went under his bad orders that he basically blamed all the commanders and sends them on what he called disciplining attacks to kind of season his troops, basically, which ends up being frontal all-out assault on Franklin. And there's some rules to simulate that on the addiction table. May or may not happen. So only one person's allowed to try to avoid that. It's Forrest. Forrest's allowed to roll for initiative, and he ends up, if he succeeds in getting initiative, he can give himself orders. No one else is allowed initiative throughout the game anyhow for the Confederates. So, but if you end up doing these disciplining attacks, the Confederates get morale bonuses for their troops, and Cleburne gets an especial bonus. This is the battle he ends up getting killed at. His troops basically become immune to morale checks while they're stacked with him, and all troops that are out doing disciplining attacks can continue to make hand-to-hand combat even when completely wrecked, which normally you can't do. And that's an interesting factor, because quite often you don't want to engage with your beat up troops because they don't even get a shot in. Well, and it was my friend Nick who brought this up. You always get a shot in if you do close combat, and you're actually required to try to do close combat under the disciplining attacks. So if you've got wrecked units, you at least get your shot off and you do some damage to the enemy before you get blown back. One interesting thing with I'm losing my train of thought here. Okay, leader loss checks get a higher chance of casualties. I'm trying to remember what there was. There was something else I wanted to say there, and it slipped my mind. Oh yeah. So I've heard some people talking about how, well, if you're only standing at 2 hexes and firing at someone, you're not really prosecuting an attack order. You know, this game actually gives the clearest statement, and this one's written by Dean, so you get the idea here. Unlike normal attacks in which a player can try to control the rate of attack, during a disciplining assault, a brigade with these orders may only do one of 2 things: expend its entire movement allowance moving directly toward the enemy, or use the entire movement allowance to make as many close combats as possible. To me, that is one of the highlighting instances. There's others in the rules themselves, even if you just have other games, that pretty much tend to indicate, look, you got to prosecute the attack, but you don't have to do it very hard. And in fact, there was an option written out somewhere, I think in some of the later editions of the rules, where you kind of give a degree to which you want the attack pursued. But generally you would be allowed anywhere within that under normal rules. Forrest has no supply wagon. He can capture one though, and then he could use that. He cannot use other corps supply wagons. Now the Confederates as a whole have a supply wagon problem. None of their supply comes in until the second day, so they could well run out of ammo and not be able to do crap with it. For Confederate variants, SD Lee is having trouble showing up in the battlefield particularly quickly. This one gives him a chance to get himself and his artillery in place earlier. An extra unit that was nearby and not used. If you don't get Lee, can you at least have his artillery? Because what happened was Hood did this big flanking maneuver with his infantry and left himself without most of his guns. What are victory conditions? Damned if I know. Okay. They are by option. Historically, Schofield's orders were to retire via Franklin towards Nashville and link up with Thomas there. This is those orders. Union gets 10 per Army supply point exiting via Franklin Area D. Back there. The Confederate gets 10 per Army supply unit destroyed. I like those, but let's keep going. As an alternative, the Federal Army could have withdrawn east towards Murfreesboro to operate against Hood. This was one of Hood's great fears, although the Union didn't consider it. The Union gets 5 per hex of Spring Hill, occupied by Union units at the end of the game. He also gains 5 victory points per enemy supply exited via Spring Hill Area C, which is down here. And remember, that's near one of these, isn't it? No. We go B. Yeah, that's the connection to this. The third is to hold Franklin. The many differing orders issued to Schofield effectively added up to stand at all cost order, which he may or may not have gotten in real life, depending on who you believe. The option relegates, as you can see, neither command was in the greatest shape, right? This option relegates Schofield's army to the role of a speed bump. The Union must control Franklin bridges at the end of the game. Victory is determined using losses only. Ignore destroyed Army supply units. Should the Union fail to control the Franklin bridges, the Confederates automatically win a major victory. So there must be also a casualty level to this, and I'm not seeing it. You add the number of enemy victory points wrecked by casualties. Fully wrecked. So, yeah. And that's brigades, so that's counters. And then you get a point total to see, you know, if you have to break at least 10 points over the enemy to get it. There's some nice notes about the scenario. I'm trying to see what we got here. Yeah, this one. Who'd have woke in the morning of the 30th furious his plan went awry? He berated his staff and generals all the way to the headquarters. He managed to insult everyone and then ordered Chatham and Stuart to charge Franklin frontally. Just for the description of this, I mean, this is not a campaign that I'm terribly aware of. I'm not really, you know, all that up on most of the actual battles in many wars, and even in something like the ACW that I have a fair amount of familiarity with, I don't have, you know, some of the knowledge that some of you guys do. And I love when you guys bring comments to me about the battles and about why some of the choices might be made. One nice thing about Dean's games, though, is he definitely gives a lot of the information about why he designed it the way he did. Just in the historical description, you can link it to, you know, what the mechanisms are, and it's nice. Anyway, we'll get this one underway. You can see there aren't a lot of troops. I've got a little bit of writing to do in terms of scribbling down some of the orders. There was some errata that came out over the years. It ended, I think 94 was the last case of it. There also seemed to be some replacement counters, but I think they came out very early before I was getting counters. And I was, basically I got a pile of counters the first time I sent a card in for games that, you know, I didn't have yet. Now I have many of them. This was one that I don't think I had the counters for. I'm pretty sure I didn't give them to my friend, but I'm not positive. I may have. But anyway, luckily for me, some of the counters came in this game, and so I've got some of them. But some of them are kind of iffy. Like, these are, I guess, the Confederate detached artillery. You have replacements. Hood here. He's printed 0 on both sides. He shouldn't be. This unit, I think, is missing a plus sign that it should have had. And some of the Confederate units are colored a little funny. Anyway, we'll get started. As you can see, with the stuff kind of trickles in pretty slowly. And things start off real quick with the Confederates just marching up in column, deploying. Quick fire. They did some casualties to this unit, one strong point. Collapsed it into one unit, basically, because it would be both Bs. But the Union fell back behind the stream. They've got a lot of ground to give back. They could have started much further forward and given the ground more slowly. They probably should have. But the stream provides them with some protection against the possibility of close combat. So that was some of the idea here. And we had these improved weapons units. They were hidden behind the forest. Now they're pulled into play. So we'll have a little bit more firepower available, but the Confederates can unlimber some guns if they desire. The problem is if they unlimber them within 2 hex, they can't do it within 1. If they do it within 2, the guns get shot at directly. If they do it behind a screen of Confederate units, though, they can provide fire in case the Confederates get pushed back, and that's what I usually like to do. Anyway. That's where we are right now. 10:30, turn is over. Confederates pushed forward. Union kept falling back. You can see, got pushed back here. This is a wrecked unit now, but these guys are disordered. You know, I mean, it's not a lot fighting, not a lot right now. There's a little cav unit here, and I don't think they have horses. We have some non-mount, yeah. See, they are in column. They've lost their horses before the battle starts. And the Union force here, The guys with the repeaters, the actual cav, they're pretty good. The other unit is the actual militia from Spring Hill, and they're as crappy as they look and in pretty bad shape. CWB Games is you really can't take the orders that are provided for you in the rulebook as a good example of what kind of orders you can write. This has an outstanding case of this. Now this is by Dean Essig, and there's no way you could get away with this in my book. Move to Spring Hill and defend Town and Pike for Army to pass. Okay, sounds like a simple order to me. Attack into town to escort supply train if necessary. I've marked this as kind of a simple complex. It's a special order that, like, you know, doesn't exist under the roll system. Basically, it's a simple order up until such a time as I actually have to perhaps switch it to a complex order. Now, I wouldn't have to make core attack stoppage checks or anything like that, but my feeling is that if I'm able to deploy there and take a fully defensive position, that's all fine. And if I'm not, I have the right to attack. I have a complex order. Now, I allow myself, when I'm playing with defensive orders, which I almost always do, to have complex orders that turn into simple orders, and that's essentially what this turns out to be. It's a simple order in the sense that it becomes a defensive order with all the advantages of a defensive order. And all the disadvantages, which is that I can't move around and keep charging forward or anything. But the complex orders are pretty specified as well. So I couldn't have an order like attack to Spring Hill and then attack somewhere else if needed, you know. But this kind of flexibility I just do not allow in my orders. I come close. On the other hand, if you look at, you know, some people really seem to think, and the line of battle seems to imply, that the desire is make everything completely geographical based. So I would have an order to move to Spring Hill, and that would be it, you know. I couldn't make this other kind of complex stuff. I would have to guess where the enemy is. I don't like that. I prefer the looseness of the CWB orders. I think they capture the reality of the situations better, but I can see where they get in the way of people trying to play competitively. We're operating without supply wagons for a while. The worst thing that can happen is low ammo, and we've got one here on the big good Union unit here. And a leader who's worse than useless. And then, if I can straighten this up, one on this Confederate unit, which actually got hit in the flank because I was stupid. He dissolved the unit in front of him, but that's no big deal. That's that Spring Hill garrison. It sucks. It's not the... I haven't taken care of this, so I'm probably not going to be able to hold Spring Hill against what I got, but we got some ugly fighting going on there right now. All those Confederate cav failed completely. They disintegrated. All I've got left is the artillery, which I'll try to pull back and do something with. I got a couple, you know, I've got some stragglers that I can try to recover. That's about it. And this unit could actually recover all the way to being effective until it takes its first hit. But that was wiped out. Opdyke, the commander here. Actually, we lost Wagner. Opdyke was one of his sub-commanders. Now, he's an interesting figure. I think he's the guy who went into Spring Hill and got drunk. But his command is amazing. He's got a big A unit. Unfortunately, they're out of ammo now. And again, you know, that might be one of the worst things that can happen. It's better for the Union than for the Confederates. The Confederates don't see their wagons come in the first day. I think they're all stacked up here for the second day. So they're going to have a tough time getting ammo unless they can capture Union wagons somehow. And even then, they won't have the Army resupply. And that artillery wasn't able to get away in time. I was able to throw some fire at it, destroy it. Limbered guns are easy to wipe out. Leader goes back here. He'll show up if those guys come back on the board. Now, I allow things to straggle recovery when they're not in full order compliance, which is to say, these guys were on the board. They should be able to, you know, come in back somewhere, I would think. I don't have the Army headquarters on the board, but they should be able to start reforming, and that's just how I feel. They're not going to be able to do anything anyway, but I know some of you may have seen Bloody Road South, where I had some serious issues with that because the game starts out with units way, attached to other units and everything. And it doesn't make sense to me that units wouldn't be able to reform at the local level at least. So, just my way of handling it. Now we've got Union units coming in for a while. We don't have Confederates here until 2 p.m. And I don't know what they're going to be able to do, but I think the Union has pretty much successfully grabbed the Spring Hill area. Around 2 p.m. is when the fortifications form, so we'll be in good shape to resist any kind of attack. And we may just sit here. I know that when I played this game previously, I think I was the Union, and I just kind of squatted on Spring Hill. I saw no reason to leave it. Unless the Confederates were going to move and start to threaten the Franklin area. And they didn't look like they wanted to, so I was like, okay, I'll defend this line of breastworks, and then I'll fall back and defend the fortifications if I need to. No reason to give up the town too early. The 1 p.m. turn passes. More Union troops coming in towards Spring Hill. We got some moving to Franklin as well. Now these are Cav, hence they storm ahead really fast. No engineers on board. They're not going to be able to rebuild the bridge. That's a really good reason you'd want to try to get Wilson orders to get him over to Spring Hill if you're going to try to defend Spring Hill. So, well, he's not really good at initiative. He's only a 1 leader. I'll probably withhold until I have a leader. By the way, these things take a turn each to travel on, except for orders. Orders can go can travel through 2 boxes a turn. So even though Cav and leaders and such not move at about the same rate as orders do, they travel more slowly here. That's just the nature of the rules here. 2:30 is rolling around. Forrest is up here with orders to attack and take Spring Hill. Now, that seems pretty damn hopeless from my point of view. If these guys had managed to stay in there and be fighting at good range, yeah, maybe. But I'm going to start rolling for initiative. Forrest is a pretty good leader, and see if I can cut that off and try to do something else. Like maybe slide across and try to get Franklin. Ooh. Meanwhile, the Union supply wagons are beginning to make their way across. We got some artillery up here. Forrest has some guns too, but actually they're back here. He lost the other ones. This unit is really not capable of fighting. And so I don't know, what kind of ground I can get, especially since 2:30 is the turn in these fortifications up here. So now we have breastworks, which is a column shift against some morale benefits. Really starts making Spring Hill a tougher thing to take, even if I had anything like parity in troops, which I do not. Well, Forrest attempted initiative and missed by a point. He only needed a 9 because he's a pretty good leader. He got an 8. So I started launching kind of the side attack. I can't really, completely try to outflank Spring Hill under the orders that I have as far as I feel, but I don't feel like I have to make an all-out frontal assault when I've got room for more units here along the front, so I'm kind of trying to go a little oblique. Well, that was enough to lose me ammo on both these units. This one, it's underneath the counter, but and that can't be recovered except by destruction of the units, which is how these guys are back on the board without ammo. And also got the other unit that came up kind of smashed up. Both these units were disordered. This one during the Confederate turn, this one during the Union. This thing getting vaporized. I mean, I'm just so outgunned here that and you add the breastworks to it. You got the supply wagon kind of trying to eke its way over to the railway. I think that's legitimate. I see no rules against that. It's got to stay on the roads. It's a supply train. And as things stand, I don't really trust being able to push the Confederates aside down the Columbia and Franklin Pike. Even though I've got orders to kind of do that, as far as I'm concerned, unless something triggers, if I'm trying to go down here, unless something triggers something, I can stay at Spring Hill and keep facing the Confederates there. I may want to dispatch these guys to try to protect the supply wagon, though, even though that's not. They have orders but don't need them, and the other units have orders that I don't even think are reasonable at all. Attack into town to escort supply train if necessary. That's not even how it's worded. It's worded as defend town and pike for rest of army to pass. Attack into town and escort supply train if necessary. The supply train doesn't have orders to proceed down the pike, though. It doesn't have any orders. So I'm going to try to push it to the railway, because I think trying to clear the pike seems like a harder job. Of course, that might be, how the Confederates end up with some value out of all this. But I just can't square these orders with, my understanding of the system at all. Okay, the 3 p.m. turn goes by, and Forrest gets initiative. He's going to try to block the two roads here, the road and the railroad here. I feel that triggers the need for escort, so we got the whole 4th Corps kind of trying to help the supply train down the rail path. Why the rail path? Well, because this is more than an escort to me. This is a bludgeon your way through. So I feel like I have to, by those orders, try to take the least resistance path, but we're going to be ending up facing both of them, filled, and actually this is the slower route, so I don't know. We got another wagon coming on. We also have Hood showing up. Now his orders are basically, Chatham's orders are basically to get to Thompson House and then just sit around on his ass. With the Union pulled out of Spring Hill, I'm not sure we can hold Spring Hill at all. So this kind of move across to cut off the wagons is and it's not like the Cav was capable of launching an attack. What might have been possible is some sort of coordinated attack with Cleburne coming down this way and Forrest coming from the rear of Spring Hill. But with Forrest's unit, he's almost destroyed already. You can see his situation here. This was a tiny little Cav unit, and it's just been mauled by having to attack, first the garrison, which altogether we could have handled, and then a corps, which we really can't. Okay, although I'm playing the historical, hey, you have to get the trains off Franklin Area D back here, I do have to worry about the potential, because the Confederate player can't know this, of the Union trying to either, he can get units off here, or here for 5 points each. Now, withdrawing here, you can see I already moved in a different direction, but if the Confederates are setting up a defense along the roads there, I've got to get Hood into place to block C, because otherwise the Union could score a lot of points by getting their wagons off to Murfreesboro. The other option, of course, then is the hold Franklin, where, I've got to worry about actually taking Franklin itself. That's actually probably one of the easiest. Honestly, all of these look like they're going to be advantageous for the Union, but that's kind of easy one to do because Franklin's so well fortified. But there are more Confederate units than there are Union units. So if my goal is to take Franklin, that might actually be plausible if Hood doesn't get too troublesome. Speaking of which, we have to worry about Hood. He's on the map now. So, we haven't done this. Let's see what happens. He's got the munchies. He can't move or issue orders. He's eating. Okay. And I've got some more reinforcements coming in. But that's key because I can't roll for initiative for these guys or anything. They're just going to go park at Thompson. Hood's taking a little break down here. I pulled these Confederates on. Something that's really goofy about these escort orders is along the lines of taking an independent unit and saying, support this unit in whatever it does. I've got something I could run around anywhere, the wagon train. It's not real fast, but I can run it around anywhere. And, you know, if I'm escorting it and have what amount to attack orders, I can march around and hit the enemy under those. I find that kind of disturbing. At the very least, I'm going to start making attack stoppage checks, but there's no real chance of that failing. But I don't know, you know, because I'm now considering, okay, well, look, the Confederates are set up pretty strong here. I'd rather bust my way through here. So we're going to swing the wagons back down the Columbia and Franklin Pike. Would I have knowledge of all this? You know, honestly, I probably have pickets out here that are watching what the Confederates are doing. I also, you know, have line of sight from here and from here. And we're talking about, you know, a certain... There's certainly visibility at that range. I'd say anything less than 20 hexes is no question. Artillery can actually fire out to 10 hexes if semi-effectively. So we're not talking, you know, a great distance here. I could look up the scale, but that doesn't mean anything to me. It probably means more to you guys than me. I don't have good spatial conversion and calculation skills when I try to say, well, how far can I see? I know I can see a mile. I can do the calculations for that. But I can see a mile if I'm on top of a hill or whatever. But anyway, I think I'm kind of giving the point there. So the Unions decided to go down the Columbia and Franklin. And this is interesting because basically once they make the decision to go down one way or the other, they're kind of stuck with it. I could pull back to Spring Hill, but those wagons can't go off the roads. So since there's no connection between the railway and the road here, that means that I can kind of shift the Confederate forces to focus on defending against one of these and not the other. And I can send a weakened unit over to screen the other side just in case something terrible happens, mainly to protect a flank more than anything else, I would guess. Anyway, that's where we are. As the 4 o'clock turn passes, Confederates beginning to set up the defense. Largely, though, these guys were straggle recovering. We got the Union pulling up into engagement range to cover the 2 supply wagons that are coming. And we got more coming along the way. But the Union feels pretty safe because Hood got a fun roll. In this case, he got the Manic Bad version. Hood ends up, I should write some more orders. I realize this 1/2 is a half value he's stuck with normally of Hood's 2 value. So he should get more value, more orders. I'm going to send some orders to Forrest too, which I'll figure out. But this is super loose cannon. Normal loose cannon rolls under CWB are, hey, you can do 1 turn's movement or attack with them, but otherwise it's pretty much not going to be too impressive. The orders get canceled after 1 turn, whether the person receiving them wants them or not. Sometimes I've been given orders that I'm like, oh shit, that's actually really cool. I wish I could keep that attack going because I'm making some headway there. I was too chicken to make the attack and someone else did. No, these are just normal orders that your enemy gets to write for you. And in this case, I gave Cheatham orders to pull back behind Rutherford Creek, which pretty much just screws Hood's whole, you know, first advance. Now, he can try to override those orders, and that's no big deal. But, yeah, it's going to cost some time. I might be able to get out of here, and I can clear out of Spring Hill. Union actions, including their orders, are enough that, and I'm going to issue some orders to Forrest as well, but those will take forever to get there, basically to disengage and, you know, head back to join the rest of the army. Basically, though, whatever orders that the Union asides. You know, if I'm ordering these guys to pull back and moving my trains the way I am, chances are pretty good that the Confederates can assume that the Union orders are to get those trains off the historical one. Alternatively, if the orders were to get the wagon trains off this way, the Union has a trivial route at this point, but it doesn't look like I'm taking advantage of that, and I certainly would if I could. My intention was to shift Cheatham over here, but anyway, so long as the Union's not pursuing that, I think we can pretty safely say that's not their goal. They might have the goal of defend Franklin and still be acting this way. Not a lot I can do about that. That means, though, that this is a less important choice. The Union has to get some infantry over here, though, to repair that bridge, because otherwise they have no way to get across to the exit hex. I don't remember if it's D or E, but they want to go off of one of those two. So we're going to have to assign something there. We may leave a force back at Spring Hill to defend it, though. Anyway, I will write some orders to get Forrest out of there. Those probably won't work because Forrest has a chance to roll for initiative and cancel them out before any delay acceptance or whatever. Forrest is pretty decent. But Chatham has no such opportunity. He has to wait for Hood to give him another set of orders. Interaction with the version 3 rules that is a bad additional effect that I don't want to take into play, which is that if the Union can write orders like this, they can put a force level to that. Now, force levels in version 3 of the rules start creating this huge penalty on the leader who issues them. And in particular, someone like Hood, who has a 0 or maybe a 2 rating, that's going to provide an anti-initiative, which would affect Forrest, and I think it also reduces his effectiveness of his later commands. I'm going to just ignore that effect for these orders. I'm going to allow the Union to use force in the orders, but I'm going to not penalize Hood further. Just because in the original and version 2 rules, and this came out in the version 2 actually, there was no penalty for using force in your orders. But in version 3, there is a penalty that wasn't taken into account for this game, which was produced before the version 3 rules. So I don't want to put an additional problem on Hood. He's got enough trouble, I think. Hood has parked himself so that next turn he can try to countermand his orders and try to send Cheatham somewhere else. I never know how to pronounce that. Cheatham. Cheatham. Do we cheat him and how, right? I don't know. Anyway, right now those guys are under a delay 1, which means there's a chance they might start moving. Over here, we're seeing the Union beginning to engage Forrest. Now this is kind of interesting. I've been kind of thinking, wow, the Union's got a really good situation right now. But I'm not so sure how good it really is, because we're getting to nightfall. Now, if Forrest takes orders, the orders that were written for him, and goes wandering off across the creek, just like Cheatham's got orders, we got a problem. Those orders don't come in until 6 p.m. But otherwise, what we've got is the Union trying to make a night assault. And these aren't great units. One of them's an E-ranked unit. One of them's an A. Good old, who is this here? Opdyke. We also have Schofield showing up along with the 23rd Corps. Now, the 23rd Corps has the same orders as the 4th Corps. I don't know what to do about that, like whether I park in Spring Hill or continue on, whether this is all, sort of up to me, because the orders are very much, hey, if necessary, go do this. If you write orders like that to a commander, you're basically giving them free rein, so you shouldn't have free rein to make the decisions, and I have no idea how to cope with that within the order system. But anyway, the Union has to get troops across through Franklin, some infantry there. And I'm thinking about sending the Spring Hill garrison because that's so beat up. But it too would have to fight its way through. The exception to that is C connects to A here. So I could actually drive down this way and try to bring them around in that direction. And in fact, that probably is the way I should have brought my wagon train down. I may have to do that at night. The problem with that is I think Confederate reinforcements may still keep coming through there. The Cav came through there. Let's see if we got any others. Nah, looks like everything else is coming in over this side of things, of all places. So, it might be worthwhile to shift my axis and try to go the freeway. And again, you know, no orders, man. I get to just follow those little wagons wherever they're going and launch my attack in that direction. No idea how to cope with that. But otherwise, there's something kind of neat happening here. And in a sense, you don't mind because, you know what, the CWB order system, it's an overlay to what you'd be able to do in any other system. It's an additional restriction. But of course, if your opponent's facing a restriction and you're not, that's kind of weird, right? So, I don't know. Righty, what do we got? We got another Confederate command which comes in and does something goofy. It's setting up a line across here. Like I said, some of the initial orders are pretty crazy. This is, I think the Hood does weird stuff baked in here. Union 23rd Corps pulling into Spring Hill. I'm not sure what they're doing, whether they're going to push forward and try to help the wagons forward or not. And the attack here is continuing. You can see we got a flank attack on these artillery. They can spin around and, you know, see if they can get one more shot off. There's only one gun left there. There were only two to begin with. Not really able to do the kind of devastating results you're used to, you know, a big 5-point battery being able to do. And I guess that's it. We're coming into nightfall, so these attacks should start faltering. I'm not sure what happens when 4th Corps fails here at all. I guess they go into the standard no orders routine, pull back, but I got to figure out what to do with the wagons if they're not being supported. They're going to have to stop doing their advance, obviously, because they just get schwacked. We've got Chatham here pulling across. He's got orders to defend the creek, which is going to bisect these forces because there's bridges both here and here. This is an uncrossable except at the fords and bridges. So that's an issue there. Just a lot of silliness going on here. Okay, so in the Confederate move, they kind of got chewed up some more, but then the Union decided not through any corps failure or anything, but that the wagons weren't going to make it through tonight. So they sent them around to go down and exit through this hex, come out over here. I'm also sending part of the Spring Hill militia, not the Cav part, which isn't really militia, I don't think, off this way. It's so chewed up, it's perfect for building bridges, right? Given that, 4th Corps starts to disengage. 23rd Corps is taking up its defense of Spring Hill. For the Confederates over here, these guys continuing on. Hood got another Munchies result, which is kind of goofy if you think about it. I don't know what kind of experience you have with opiates, but there's a reason for the term heroin chic. And it's because you don't want to particularly eat when you're on these things. And I think somebody who maybe has only experience with pot, I'm sure, you know, as you get older, you're more likely to have gotten morphine or something like that in your life through illnesses or something. But man, you really don't want to eat at all. Anyway, The effect is reasonable, though, because you might well, while not taking your fix itself here, you may be incapable of doing much of anything effective. The dangers of this scenario is that the disciplining attack is basically just a purely random event, as opposed to a, hey, you really screwed up. I guess it could be considered that this mess, Hood could decide that's all the subordinate's fault, that he gave good orders, and even though there was no attack or anything really, he's given it a disciplining assault this turn. And what the Union's done is said, okay, at 4 a.m. launch that attack. And he's going to position Stuart over here to launch this way, Chatham over here to launch, and Forrest to march up the Columbia and Franklin Pike, all to hit Spring Hill instead of Franklin. Good and fine. The disadvantage, of course, is that he's giving Hood a lot of time to countermand those orders, and essentially, if Hood can get any orders off onto those units, it foils the disciplining assault, which is okay in a sense, because the other alternative would be, hey, just launch it now. Corps are not going to be able to continue the attack to the level of bloodiness that I'd wish as the Union upon Spring Hill. But it does kind of put some pressure on Hood, because he's got to overcome the penalties with pending orders and all that kind of crap. So it might be harder to get the orders off, and he's already got enough trouble. And that extra time should be enough time for me to get the Spring Hill garrison, which is needed to rebuild the road, the bridge, and the supply wagons over onto the Franklin map, I hope. We'll see. I don't believe that Forrest is allowed to roll for initiative until he actually accepts the orders. So that's kind of an ugly factor in there. He might be able to roll for initiative before they arrive, but once they arrive, he's got to try to implement them. So that big 4-hour, or that big all-night delay, more than 4 hours, is going to hit him, and it's going to hit pretty hard, because he would have been the kind of available roving force to disrupt this. And now he's not going to be available for that. And that means I can probably keep the entire Union force here, which is cool, because if the assault's going to happen, it's got to all be there or all be gone, because the Union cannot hold up to that kind of assault if they don't have everything there. 7 p.m., more 4th Corps coming on, the rest of it really, I've gathered Gunfeld, whatever, I can't remember his name. I can read it off here. Schofield. Over to 23rd Corps. He's going to send 23rd over to Franklin. The reason for that is, I don't want to... Spring Hill's unimportant. The only reason it's important is that I've issued these Hood orders. And if I see Hood's troops moving in a way not towards Spring Hill, I got a problem. But I do want to maintain Spring Hill until the last of the wagons gets through, which I think is this one, at 8 p.m. at the very least. I may actually let Hood have it off easy and go marching elsewhere. Hood this turn was unable to write orders because he got the Manic Bad version, which means that the Union could have written orders for him. I kind of like the idea of watching Hood hit Spring Hill, and that's one reason I kind of want to sit here. But to tell you the truth, it's the less defensible terrain. It doesn't have the entrenchments that Franklin does. And it's not valuable to any of the potential victory conditions, which is fine, except what if Hood manages to give orders and get his troops moving over to the Franklin map? Speaking of which, we have a column beginning to march along that long route from the sea. These wagons can make it there as well. And the interesting thing about the way these work is Confederate and Union forces can pass each other by on there. They can both be in the same box. They can't interact with each other until they get onto one of the real maps. Hood is able to give orders quite often in the battle. I mean, he succeeds on a 2 through 5, right? Plus he gets the good version Manic on an 8. So he gets to send out enough orders to prosecute a battle, more or less. And the problem is, I'm using foot dragging, so those disciplining assault orders, I can't even roll for them until 3 a.m. because of the way I wrote them. Which means he was able to cancel one out by just writing orders to this unit. And in fact, I'm thinking that I'm going to allow, as soon as that order arrives, for Forrest to start rolling for his own initiative to try to break that order, because he wants to cut across as well. B to B is going to be coming to this road here. And on the other hand, Schofield gave orders to 23rd Corps to go marching down this way. This is the longer path. Forrest is the real threat here, but the Confederates have orders to basically march down Old Settlers Road over to the Pike and make their way across, kind of just bypassing Spring Hill. So we're not going to see much happen at Spring Hill, I don't think, in this game. And 9 p.m. we got pretty much the rest of the 23rd Corps coming in here. I think that's about it for the Union. That's their whole force moving. I've moved into position to give 4th Corps orders. I think I want them to try to provide an escort to the wagons, because they can move a little more quickly than the wagons can, and I'm kind of worried because, although presumably if this were a hidden movement game you wouldn't see this, and there are rules for that in CWB, of course, but what we've got here is Chatham's Corps on the move, and gee, I know I didn't give them that order, so if I get another option for orders, there's no question he's going to get the orders to go do something stupid one way or another. And the Union got an opportunity to issue some orders to Chatham. They don't come until the 11 p.m. turn, but for the 10 p.m. turn he's continuing to march here. I shifted these cav down to help protect this if need be, because these guys are on their way. I can't do anything about them. And everything else is just awaiting orders right now. Nothing exciting happening. Forrest hasn't tried to do anything. Hood couldn't send any more orders. Hood's got a problem because of the version 3 rules. He's got to give orders to the Army of Tennessee as well to get it moving. Now, it's not that big a deal if it doesn't move, except that it gets harder and harder for him to send orders. So he's going to want to shift them. These poor suckers have orders to go back up this way now. We hit midnight, things just get crazier. Confederate units marching up this way, they almost contacted, they were in range that they could have, but I don't believe they have attack orders. It's hard to tell because they don't specify here, but their orders are move to Spring Hill, await rest of corps and all artillery to arrive, and then report to Army headquarters. Well, the assumption there is Spring Hill will have been cleared by now. Well, it wasn't. Union 4th Corps, though, got its orders to start escorting the wagons, and they slam it, and they do have attack orders. They slammed into Chatham's column and hit it, and now the orders to withdraw kind of start making more sense, even though Hood clearly couldn't have known what was going on when he did. But, you know, he's having semi-lucid moments now and then or something. Hood's command here, he got the bad Manic again and gave orders to his headquarters to go run up here. They haven't accepted the BAT, but he's going to have to go do that, and that'll throw more monkey wrenches in his ability to operate. Now that's Series 3 rules going into play here, and possibly compounding the problems on the Hood table. But in general, it's pretty unlikely for me to use the Union's bonus to just move the headquarters. That's a pretty minor effect. Meanwhile, Union forces still marching their way here. These guys look like they're going to be able to cover this because these guys are not going this way. Just craziness. Let's end the day on a crazy note. The Hood table. On a 12, he kills himself. Bang! Best thing he could have done. That puts Forrest in charge of the army. Now, Forrest has a long way to walk, but that's okay. Who do I have? Chalmers here is now in charge of the Cav Corps, but the Cav is just so wiped out that that's not a big deal. I forgot to make a roll. We'll let him stew over his new command. These guys turned and started running away. They're done with their order, though. They could only move for one turn. So let me make sure that's knocked out, too. And they're sitting in a no orders state. They can kind of try to gather together. This probably has to go further than it went. Over here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make it to here, and that's where the army's going, or where his corps is going to kind of center. I'm not going to see any orders issued until Forrest makes it over to the Army of Tennessee, which might be up here somewhere by then. Meanwhile, the Union 4th Corps failed its corps stoppage, so they're turning and marching back into Spring Hill. At the same time, Schofield has run down and is over here heading for Franklin, which means it's going to take forever to get the 4th Corps moving. 23rd has orders to march down this way. So this has just turned into a really, really crazy fight. I'm going to load this up as first day because we've just finished the 12 a.m. turn or whatever, and this seems like a good point to stop. We'll probably have 2 videos for the next day because I expect there'll be some actual fighting, maybe.